Oh, I just realized I don't have to wait for a translator. Hare Krishna. Sorry, I'm so used to being in a foreign country. Uh, um, welcome everyone for our Purnima festival today. I just returned to America earlier last week, and this is the first place where I'll be speaking. So please forgive me if I've explained this before. I go through a minor adjustment each time I come to an English-speaking place where I speak straight. I'm used to speaking in fragments. So I'm going to take advantage, and I'll be doing some reading today, something that I don't have the opportunity, the luxury to do in many places, because if I read, there's no sense to me to read because nobody understands me anyways. So I have the other person do the reading. So it's a luxury for me to be able to read a little bit. I'll be reading a little bit today and speaking a little bit on what we're reading from, about the significance of Lord Chaitanya's appearance. We'll be reading from Chaitanya Charitamrita. But before I start, I wanted to chant a bhajan. This is by Narottam Das Thakur. It's called Gaura Duti Pada. And I'll read the translation first. Anyone who has accepted the two lotus feet of Lord Chaitanya as their only asset knows the true essence of devotional service. If anyone gives submissive oral reception to the pleasing and sweet pastimes of Lord Chaitanya, then immediately his heart becomes cleansed of all material contamination. Anyone who simply chants the name of Sri Krishna Chaitanya will immediately develop love of Godhead. I offer him all congratulations by saying, bravo. If anyone feels ecstasy and cries by simply hearing the transcendental qualities of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he at once understands the eternal loving affairs between Radha and Krishna. Anyone who has understood that the associates of Lord Chaitanya are eternally liberated souls immediately becomes eligible to enter into the abode of Krishna, the son of Nanda Maharaj in Vrindavan, in his next birth. If anyone understands that there is no difference between Gaura Mandala, the place in West Bengal wherein Lord Chaitanya had his pastimes, and the transcendental abode of Sri Vrindavan Dham, and he actually lives in Vrindavan. Anyone who takes pleasure sporting within the waves of the ocean of Lord Chaitanya's distribution of love of God immediately becomes a confidential devotee of Sri Sri Radha Madhava. Doesn't matter whether such a devotee is in the renounced order of life or whether he is a householder. If he is actually taking part in Lord Chaitanya's Sankirtan activities and actually understanding what it is, then such a person is always liberated. Narottam Das aspires for his association. Could I have a pair of cartels, please? Do we have any small, like nice, simple sounding cartels, not clangers? That's the query. Yeah, good. Thank you. You can put the clangers away. Gauranga Duti Pada Jadana Sampada Gaurangya Beauty Pada Jadana Sampada Gaurangya Beauty Pada Jadana Sampada Sejane Bhakti Rasa San Gaurangera Madhura Dila Jharkhani Praveshila. Can we skip the Mridanga? Gaurangera Madhulila Jharkhani Praveshila. Hidaya Nirmala Belo Dar Ye Gaurangera Namalae Tada Hoy Premadae Ye Gaurangera Namalae Tada Hoy Premadae Tare Mui Jai Boli Hari Gauranga Gune Te Jure Nitya Lila Tare Sure Gauranga Gune Te Jure Nitya Lila Tare Sure Sejana Bhakati Adi Kari Gaurangera Sangi Gane Nitya Siddha Kori Mane Gaurangera Sangi Gane Nitya Siddha Kori Mane Sejai Bhajendra Sutta Vas Mandala Bhumi Je Bhajane Chintamani Shri Gaura Mandala Bhumi Je Bhajane Chintamani Tada Hoi Braja Bhume Vas Tada Hoi Braja Bhume Vas Gaura Prema Rasanave Setaranga Jebe Dube Gaura Prema Rasanave Setarange Jeba Dube Sei Radha Madhavantaranga Sei Radha Madhavantaranga Priye Baba Nite Take Hagaranga Bole Take Viha Baba Nite Take Hagaranga Bole Take Narottama Magitara Sangha Narottama Magitara Sangha Jaya Gauranitai 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 Jaya Gauranitai Jaya Gauranitai 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 Jaya Gauranitai Nitai Gaura Haribo 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 Gaura Haribo In this bhajan, it is stated that if anyone gives submissive oral reception to the pleasing and sweet pastimes of Lord Chaitanya, his heart becomes cleansed of all contamination. And if anyone feels ecstasy and cries by simply hearing the transcendental qualities of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he once understands the eternal loving affairs between Radha and Krishna. Discussion of these topics can seem somewhat elusive to us, especially when we hear about ecstasies and tears coming from the eyes and immediate purification simply by giving submissive oral reception. I wanted to read some verses in this connection. It's actually from a chapter, Madhya Lila chapter 2. I'm going to read from two places, Madhya Lila chapter 2 and from Adi Lila chapter 3. But first from Madhya Lila chapter 2, which speaks a little bit about these. Madhya Lila chapter 2 is Lord Chaitanya's ecstatic manifestations of love of God. That which he experienced, which he came to experience, and also described within that chapter, by so experiencing, he taught others how to experience it, by coming those who came in contact with him. And as Kaviraj Goswami goes on to explain, that if somebody is able to understand a little bit about the mystery of these ecstasies, about Chaitanya's pastimes, it means he was very fortunate to have come in contact with somebody who's in that line, so that he was able to understand meanings of what are these ecstasies that Lord Chaitanya was experiencing. It's described as the internal reasons. He had reasons for his appearance, both internal and external reasons. And in this verse I'm going to read from Madhya Lila, chapter 2, the ecstatic manifestations of Lord Chaitanya. Kaviraj Goswami cautions that such topics should not be discussed freely, because if they are, no one will understand them. I'm in that line. I'm not going to discuss it freely, but I do feel that the topics, we can approach them in a way that, because we read about them. We read about Lord Chaitanya's ecstasies. We read in Chaitanya Charitamrita, there's very, very graphic descriptions of what ecstatic manifestations he manifested on his body, with his limbs becoming elongated, his blood oozing from his pores of his skin, his body, his limbs of his body entering into his body, into his torso, becoming just like a tortoise, and how he began speaking like a madman. And he was actually described in this chapter, and Kaviraj Goswami gives these descriptions in this chapter. It's in Madhya Lila, because for two reasons. One reason was he wanted to make sure everyone got it, in case he didn't live long enough to describe it at the end of Antya Lila, the later chapters. Why did he want to make sure everyone got it? He wanted to make sure everyone got it because he wanted to make sure everyone heard about it, because it would help them in approaching their ability to understand what is this ecstatic love of God. And he goes on to explain how to hear it with submissive oral reception, which is Narottam Das Thakur was describing in his song, Gaurangira Duti Padpada. Hearing it with submissive oral reception, and by hearing it, even if one cannot understand it, Kaviraj Goswami says very clearly, even if one doesn't understand anything of it, if it repeatedly goes on hearing it again and again and again, gradually he can begin to understand. He's giving us a little introduction as to how to enter into Mahaprabhu's pastimes. It's like sometimes like we think that, well, where is this ecstasy? Where is this ecstatic love? Where are these tears coming from the eyes? But how much attached are we to actually hearing these narrations, which are presented? And we're going to read about that also. Kaviraj Goswami is going to explain how they were presented authentically, because he heard them from a source which was a reliable source, who realized these things, and he memorized them. Like, for instance, Raghunath Das Goswami is who Kaviraj Goswami heard many of Lord Chaitanya's pastimes that he had manifested in Jagannath Puri. Raghunath Das Goswami was with Lord Chaitanya in Jagannath Puri, and he had heard them from the notes that Swarup Damodar had taken, who was a very intimate associate of Lord Chaitanya. He took many notes of things that he personally witnessed and he saw himself. Raghunath Das Goswami heard those notes, he memorized them. Of course, there's a certain benefit of having controlled mind. He memorized them, and then when he went to, after he left Jagannath Puri, he went first to Vrindavan, actually. Raghunath Das Goswami was in such a state of despair of having lost the association. Like we have a song we sometimes sing, Jaya Nyulu Premadana, Karuna Pachur, the song to departed Vaishnavas, where Narottam Das Thakur describes his feelings of separation from Lord Chaitanya, from Lord Chaitanya's associates, and from the devotees of the Lord. He describes that when he thinks about these devotees whose association he had and lost, he feels like smashing his head against a stone. The feelings of separation. Such feelings are there. So Raghunath Das Goswami, when he actually left, after Lord Chaitanya had left the planet, after Swarup Damodar had left the planet, and he was feeling very vacant, and he decided he would go to Vrindavan, and he was actually thinking that he would give up his life by jumping from Govardhan Hill. These are feelings. And someone may say, well, how do these feelings, how do they sync with ecstasy? Right? How do they sync? How do we actually understand it? In fact, I'm going to jump ahead a little bit, and I'm going to read something from Brihad Bhagavatamrita, which, because it will sort of like introduce this topic that we're going to speak about, these ecstatic symptoms, which are such that they were described by Kaviraj Goswami, what Lord Chaitanya was experiencing. It was like drinking poison and experiencing the sweetest nectar, both at the same time. Right? Imagine drinking poison and what it does when it enters into the bloodstream and how it affects the body. And drinking nectar at the same time, experiencing some bliss. How to understand that this drinking of poison, these feelings of separation, this pain, madness. Lord Chaitanya's madness was compared to be like the madness of Srimati Radharani when she was speaking to the bee in Brahma Gita, and she began speaking in so many different ways in total madness and sadness of feelings of separation from Krishna. How to understand that is a goal. Someone may become very bewildered to hear, not only is it a goal, but it surpasses even the bliss of Vaikuntha. It surpasses the bliss of higher planetary systems. It surpasses the bliss of many of the higher transcendental abodes, which are unlimited in the vast spiritual sky. It surpasses it. How to understand that one should aspire for it. And Sanatana Goswami in his Brihad Bhagavatamrita cautions. I'm going to read something in this connection. I have a tendency to lose track of time. But, okay. And this is Sanatana Goswami. Actually, he's giving a commentary to a verse was spoken by Narada Muni to Gopakumar. And the translation of the verse is, we are not able to describe completely this special ecstatic state, nor is it proper for us to do so. So I say, why am I doing it? I'm not going to go into too many details of this ecstatic state. I just want everyone to at least get a sense of, why did Lord Chaitanya appear? Why did he come? He wanted to taste something. External reason, he came to propagate the chanting of the holy name of the Lord. And he came to answer the call of Advaita Acharya, who at that particular time was witnessing in Navadvip that many people were not so much interested in glorifying devotional service. Not only that, but he witnessed that when people would come together and congregate, they were much more interested to congregate for weddings and birthdays than they were for Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam. He was witnessing that people were more attached to worshiping Goddess Durga for wealth and material opulence than they were engaged in the Sankirtan or congregational chanting of the holy names of the Lord. He was seeing that people were very much attached to the materialistic way of life. And Advaita Acharya was the foremost proponent of bhakti at that time. He appeared before Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He was the foremost proponent of bhakti. And when he was witnessing the lack of interest in devotion, he was thinking that only if Krishna himself comes will he be able to correct what I'm seeing before my very eyes. And therefore he began worshiping, as he described. He began worshiping the Shalagam Shila with Ganges water and calling out prayers to the Lord. Please, please come, and I can't. What can I possibly do without your presence? Only you can give these. Just as in a similar mood Prabhupada was saying, when he wrote his Markandeya Bhagavatam. You say, what good will my words do? Only Krishna, if they hear your words, the pages of Srimad Bhagavatam, then will they become delivered. But I'm simply an insignificant beggar. Who am I? What can I possibly do? But I've been given an impossible task, an impossible mission to somehow come to the West and to speak this message of Krishna consciousness. But I know I don't have the qualification. So Advaita Acharya was feeling the same way. I'm known as the greatest proponent of bhakti, but he could speak on very elevated subject matters, but when he saw the state of affairs, he was thinking, only if Krishna himself comes, can they possibly have any hope for spiritual life? So, I've forgotten reference to what I was making that statement, but it was reference to something maybe you'll remember, but I forgot. My memory is getting a little bit bad as I'm getting older, and I'm sure you'll probably notice that as I continue to speak. But in the verse, Narada Muni is saying, we are not able to describe completely this special ecstatic state, nor is it proper for us to do so. And even if the most perfect of scriptures, those dedicated to promoting devotional service, were to describe it in detail, the effect on ignorant people would be contrary. So this is Narada Muni's speaking to Gopakumar. If we start talking about Gopakumar, we'll go someplace completely different than Chaitanya Mahaprabhu right now, so I won't go there. But Narada Muni is simply emphasizing that, and as he does in many places where he meets Gopakumar on his journey, he tells Gopakumar, he says, I can tell you something about this, but as much as I tell you, you won't be able to really understand it to experience it yourself. You have to experience it to know it. He said, and even he began, when Narada Muni was describing about Goloka, and he was speaking about the characteristics of Goloka, he was saying, I can't even experience it myself. But you, Gopakumar, you are of that place. I can see you have that bhava. You want that kind of relationship, that kind of ecstatic, loving relationship with the Supreme Lord, which is only accessible to those who have that specific type of spontaneous mood of devotion to the Lord. But you have it. How did Narada Muni know that he had it? Because Gopakumar had previously visited heavenly planets. He had visited many other planets in the planetary system. He had previously visited Vaikuntha. He got the association of the Lord of Vaikuntha. And when he saw the association of the Lord of Vaikuntha, he immediately called out. He said, who is this fantastic personality? Because Gopakumar was looking for he was looking for the Supreme Lord. He was told this mantra he was chanted was given to him by the Supreme Lord. And if he kept on chanting that mantra, he would see the Supreme Lord face to face. So everywhere he went, when he first saw a wonderful manifestation, he was thinking, this must be the Supreme Lord. Gopakumar was a very naive little cowherd boy, young boy. Here I go. I'll stop there. But, but when he first saw the Lord of Vaikuntha, he saw this most wonderful feature of, and he saw him surrounded by others who were worshiping him. And he saw his beautiful features of his body, and he saw his majestic, he looked like a king of kings. And he saw him sitting there on a royal throne. And when he saw him, he opened up his hands and he said, Gopal! Gopal! Because that was his mood. He wanted to associate with Madan Gopal, who he considered to be a friend. He wanted to be his friend. He wanted that kind of loving reciprocal relationship with his worshipful Lord in a mood of friendship. So Narada saw this. This was Gopakumar's tendency, that he saw the Lord of Vaikuntha, Vaikuntanath, as Gopal, and he saw that others around him didn't appreciate what he had to say. Why? Because they had a different mood. At Vaikuntha, the residents of Vaikuntha, they have a different mood. They have a mood of majestic service, of awe and reverence. It's called Aishvaya Gyan. They have knowledge of the Lord's majestic features. And because they're self-realized souls, they actually have love of God. But their love is diminished to some degree because they lose their sense of spontaneity because they know Krishna's God. Because they know him as the Supreme Lord. They lose their spontaneity, and therefore they feel a little bit, their love is a little bit, as word is used, crippled as a result, because they cannot spontaneously act according to their spontaneous mood. Like Chaitanya Charitamrita gives the example, like a cowherd boy, when he's playing with Krishna as his friend, when he jumps on Krishna's back, he says, what kind of a big man do you think you are? Don't you know you and I are equal? Now, that's how a cowherd boy thinks when he jumps on Krishna's back. But imagine if awe and reverence was there. How could he jump on Krishna's back? Not possible. Not possible at all. So, Narada Muni, even himself, was not fully conversant. He was not fully aware and did not fully experience the kind of ecstatic love which is manifest to those who had this special type of devotion to Krishna in Goloka Vrindavan. And one of the symptoms that devotees have in this ecstatic mood of prema, mahabhava, is that they have feelings of separation. And those feelings of separation externally looks like pain. It looks like they're suffering. And this is what Narada Muni is going to, and Sanatana Goswami is going to address here. They can't get it, and sometimes when people hear about this, they become, is that what we're supposed to aspire for? Is pain and suffering? And that's what's being addressed here in this verse, and I'll continue to read it because it will bring us back to Lord Chaitanya's ecstatic symptoms of love of God, which he came to experience because he wanted, one of his reasons, his internal reason, was to experience the mood of Srimati Radharani, who manifested this highest symptom of love of Godhead to the highest degree. Let me read the commentary. Gopakumara wants to learn more from Narada about the special kind of ecstasy that comes from mature love of God. But here Narada asserts that he is unqualified to explain it. Prema Bhakti is indeed beyond the reach of anyone's mind and words. It's not accessible by the mind or by words. Only devotees who have directly perceived it can understand it. Before a general audience, then, it is inappropriate to say very much about even the external symptoms of prema. Thus, Srimad Bhagavatam and other bhakti shastras avoid revealing too much. The devotional scriptures anticipate that after reading that, prema is like the fire of universal annihilation, multiplied millions of times. Anybody ever read the description of fire of universal annihilation when the universe is destroyed at the time of universal devastation? Right? The whole universe is burnt up in this blazing fire. Universe. Multiply that by 1,000,000 times. And that's what a devotee feels. The example that Sanatana Goswami gives, the example of just like ice. He says ice, if you touch ice and put it against the skin, it burns. It feels like it's burning. But the burning is an illusory sensation. It's not real. Through the course of time, you'll begin to understand that it's freezing cold. In the same way, he says, this pain of ecstatic love of God is like this illusory conception of burning when one puts ice. It looks like it, but it's false. It's not really what it looks like. What it is, it's the highest form of bliss. But we're so conditioned to think that pain is suffering because that's all we know in this world. We don't know anything else. And that's why Narada Muni repeatedly says, if you really want to know it, I can't tell you about it. The only way you can really know it, if you see it, you can know it. Elsewhere in Brihad Bhagavatamrita says, if you actually ever meet Srimati Radharani, then if you see how she manifests these ecstatic symptoms, then you can really begin to understand what these ecstatic symptoms are like. He says, but it's not so easy to get the opportunity to see Srimati Radharani. Therefore, he says, if one is fortunate to get Srimati Radharani who appears in a different form, combined form of Radha and Krishna in the form of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And as we spoke of before, either from Chaitanya Mahaprabhu or for somebody who's in succession from Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who's also gotten a glimpse of what it's like, then one possibly can begin to understand. So, the devotional scriptures anticipate that after reading that prema is like the fire of universal annihilation multiplied millions of times, people will be afraid to cultivate prema bhakti. Srila Sridhar Swami, in his comments on Srimad Bhagavatam, encourages neophyte readers by portraying the symptoms of prema bhakti, described therein as signs of happiness, not unhappiness. In other words, Sridhar Swami, he's thinking that most people aren't going to understand this. So he's going to explain something in a verse from the Srimad Bhagavatam that makes it sound like it's all happy. Why? And there's a reason for that. I'll go on to explain. He quotes a verse, and I won't read the verse because it's not that relevant. When the supreme ecstasy of prema in separation appears outwardly like supreme distress, there's nothing wrong with this except that persons lacking spiritual knowledge will misunderstand devotional service to be a miserable experience and will have nothing to do with it. They will turn instead to impersonal jnana, to achieve liberation, or to materialistic karma, to fulfill their desires for happiness. Rather than listen to the perfect authorities on bhakti, they will hear from ordinary ignorant men. Therefore, it's not spoken so overtly in Shastra. Even the example given of Shukadeva Goswami, sometimes people ask, why didn't Shukadeva Goswami mention the name Radha? So it's not even mentioned. The closest is the word Aradhana, which is mentioned in the 10th canto of the Bhagavatam, which is still relevant. But Shukadeva Goswami, when he was speaking Srimad Bhagavatam to Maharaj Parikshit, he was afraid to mention the name Radha because he might go into ecstasy and he might not be able to finish his presentation of Srimad Bhagavatam. So there's no mention of the word Radharani from the lips of Shukadeva Goswami. And others also who were present, because there were many, it wasn't just Parikshit Maharaj who was present. There were many others, sages and jnanis and yogis, and they were all present to hear the Srimad Bhagavatam. They may not understand either. So there's a cautioning about not to speak openly about the details of such intimate ecstatic love of God. Now I said I wanted to start by reading from a verse of Chaitanya Charitamrita. I'll get to that verse right now. And this verse is Madhya Lila, chapter 2, text number 80. Purve vraja vilasi, ye tina abhilashi, yat neha asvada nak haila, Shri Radhara bhavasara, apane kari angikara, se tina vastu asvadila. During his previous pastimes, speaking about Lord Chaitanya, his previous pastimes were, can anyone tell me what his previous pastimes were? Who can take a guess? Who? Very good. Thank you. Krishna. During his previous pastimes in Vrindavan, I didn't say in Vrindavan because that would have given it away. Lord Krishna desired to enjoy the 3 different types of ecstasy. But despite great endeavor, he could not taste them. Such ecstasies are the monopoly of Srimati Radharani. Therefore, in order to taste them, Sri Krishna accepted the position of Srimati Radharani in the form of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. One of the reasons why Lord Chaitanya appeared. What were those 3, how are they described here? 3 different types of ecstasy. They are called to relish the position of Srimati Radharani, to understand the transcendental sweetness of himself. He's trying to figure out what is it that everybody sees in me that gives them such ecstasy. It seems so wonderful. I'd like to taste it myself, but I can't. As long as I can't, as Krishna, I can't understand it. I can't fathom it. I can't know what they experience. So in order to know what they experience about me, I have to become like them. So the third reason that Lord Chaitanya appeared was to enjoy the bliss tasted by Radharani. The sweetness, and to relish the position of Radharani. These are shortened forms. If I go into the elongated forms, we will run out of time. So this is the first verse from Madhya Lila, chapter 2. And the second verse, I'll skip reading the Sanskrit. By personally tasting the mellows of love of Godhead, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu taught his direct disciples the process. In other words, one way that Lord Chaitanya came to distribute ecstatic love of God was by tasting it himself. As we explained before. When others saw how he was tasting it, and they saw the ecstatic symptoms that were manifest in his body, they could understand, this is something. There's a whole story in Chaitanya Bhagavat that I'll make it short. About Haridas Thakur. Haridas Thakur, he had love of God. At one time, he was passing by a snakebite physician who was chanting the glories of Anantashesha. And when he heard the glories of Anantashesha coming from the snakebite physician's mouth, Haridas Thakur, when he heard these descriptions, he began manifesting ecstatic symptoms. And tears started flowing from his eyes. He lost external consciousness. He fell on the ground. When he fell on the ground, his body was writhing in ecstatic love as that which he was experiencing. And while he was experiencing that, there was a group of people who were standing around the snakebite physician, who were all listening to the snakebite physician and seeing his, whatever he was doing. And they noticed that the snakebite physician did absolutely nothing. He just stood back and waited until Haridas Thakur came back to external consciousness. And when he came back to external consciousness, Haridas Thakur understood that what had happened, that he had lost external consciousness, and he was embarrassed. And he felt so embarrassed that he just tried to get away without being noticed by anyone, and he left that place. He didn't want fame. He didn't want recognition. He didn't want to be recognized as a great Vaishnava. He felt embarrassed by the symptoms which he manifested. So by watching this whole affair, then what happened was there was one so-called Brahmana who was present and saw Haridas Thakur and saw everybody reverentially holding their hands as Haridas Thakur was manifesting these symptoms. And this Brahmana was thinking, this Haridas Thakur, he's taken birth in a very low family. I'm a Brahmana. I'm much more elevated than he is. So what did he do? He fell on the ground and started feigning ecstasy, smashing his hands on the ground, writhing in ecstasy, crying, rolling. And what did the snakebite physician do? He took a stick and began beating him. And immediately, of course, he felt the pain right away. It's not like he had to come to external consciousness, because he was always in external consciousness. He began crying and shouting, "Mother, save me! Mother, save me!" as he was running away. And all the people were standing around, and they approached the snakebite physician and they said to him, "Why did you do that? Why did you? Haridas Thakur did that, and you stood reverentially with your hands folded, respecting him. But when this Brahmin did it," and then the snakebite physician began speaking as if he had several mouths. He began glorifying the qualities and characteristics of Haridas Thakur. He said, because Haridas Thakur is a genuine Vaishnava. He is a genuine Vaishnava, and what he was experiencing were genuine ecstatic symptoms. This so-called Brahmana, he was just feigning ecstasy. I could see right through it. And therefore, I beat him just to show everyone that he was not in ecstatic consciousness. If he was, he wouldn't have manifested what he manifested for all of you to see for yourselves. So this type of ecstatic symptom is manifest. It's not simply some show display. In fact, when devotees manifest it, they always try to hide it. In fact, devotees even tell the story about one time Srila Prabhupada, he was chanting in the Bhagavatam class. And Prabhupada was chanting Jai Radha Madhava. And all of a sudden, he just lost external consciousness. And devotees were wondering, where's Prabhupada? What's he doing? And they waited and waited and waited until his eyes opened up and he realized what happened. And he felt embarrassed and he just began to continue. They don't want recognition. It's not ecstatic love. It's not for recognition, for fame, for pratishta, for respect, for puja, for worship. They don't want these things. But it comes. What can they do? It comes by the mercy of the Lord. It manifests by the mercy of the Lord and manifests by the mercy of the devotees of the Lord. And such symptoms would manifest. There are, as we previously described. So here it said, By personally tasting the mellows of love of God, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu taught his direct disciples the process. The process. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is the most munificent incarnation of the touchstone of love of God. He does not consider whether one is proper or improper recipient, but gives his treasure to anyone and everyone. Thus he is the most munificent. He does not discriminate. He gives it to anyone and everyone, as in the ways that we described. I want to read a few more verses. It's okay? Yeah. I won't get to Adi Lila chapter 3, which we discussed about Krishna when he was in Vrindavan and he began to think. Anyways, I won't. If I start talking about it, then we'll do it. But I want to read. This is very, very important to the topic we're discussing this evening. These just few verses, which Kaviraj Goswami is explaining, is the importance of how to receive this, how to hear it, and how to give faithful, submissive oral reception to these topics. Because what happens if one gives faithful, submissive oral receptions to these topics, even though they're so profound, he will explain what happens as a result of it. So I will read. He says, if one says that Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita is full of Sanskrit verses, and therefore not understandable by a common man, I reply that what I have described are the pastimes of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and that for me to satisfy everyone is not possible. In other words, as we explained before, he received this, he heard it from Srila Raghunath Das Goswami, who heard it from Srila Swarup Damodar Goswami, who had written it in his kadachas, his diary, his notes of everything that he personally witnessed in the association of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So it's coming, unauthorized disciplic succession. And Kaviraj Goswami is saying, it's not possible to satisfy everyone. In the purport, Prabhupada says, Srila Kaviraj Goswami and one who follows in his footsteps do not have to cater to the public. Their business is simply to satisfy the previous acharyas and describe the pastimes of the Lord. One who is able to understand can relish this exalted transcendental literature, which is actually not meant for ordinary persons like scholars and literary men. Generally, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's pastimes recorded in Chaitanya Charitamrita are studied in universities and scholastic circles from a literary and historical point of view, but actually, Chaitanya Charitamrita is not a subject matter for research workers or literary scholars. It is simply meant for those devotees who have dedicated their lives to the service of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Next verse. In this Chaitanya Charitamrita, there is no contradictory conclusion, nor is anyone else's opinion accepted. I have written this book to describe the simple substance as I have heard it from superiors. If I become involved in someone's likes and dislikes, I cannot possibly write the simple truth. What he's saying is if I'm simply catering to an audience of what they would like to hear and what they would not like to hear, how can I present the truth? I can only present that which is as I've heard it. And Prabhupada makes this point, clarifies this point even more increasingly in his short commentary. The simplest thing for human beings is to follow their predecessors. Judgment according to mundane senses is not a very easy process. Whatever is awakened by attachment to one's predecessor is the way of devotional service, as indicated by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. In other words, this is how it's awakened. By attachment to hearing from the predecessor acharyas, presenting the message as they have heard it, and they themselves have realized, and they have experienced it, and as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu taught by his example, as he himself tasted it. This is the way. This is the way to follow, to receive. The author says, however, that he cannot consider the opinions of those who become attracted or repelled by such words, because one cannot write impartially in that way. In other words, the author is stating that he did not inject personal opinion in Chaitanya Charitamrita. He has simply described his spontaneous understanding from superiors. If he had been carried away by someone's likes and dislikes, he could not have written of such a sublime subject matter in such an easy way. The actual facts are understandable to real devotees. When these facts are recorded, they are very congenial to the devotees. But one who is not a devotee cannot understand. Such is the subject matter for realization. Mundane scholarship and its concomitant attachments and detachments cannot arouse spontaneous love of God. Such love cannot be described by a mundane scholar. Next verse, 2 more verses. If one does not understand in the beginning, but continues to hear again and again, this is the point I made before. If one does not understand in the beginning, but continues to hear again and again, why would one continue to hear again and again? Why? If one doesn't understand it. Why? Very simple reason. Why? Because his faith has been awakened. If his faith has been awakened, that there must be something. There must be something to this presentation. There must be something appealing, something attractive. There must be something that's beyond my mundane experience with my mundane senses, my tongue, my eyes, that I can't experience. Atakshi Krishna nabadi nabavedrayam indriyai sevamukhi jivado svayam eva sparatyada. As Rupa Goswami says, the Krishna cannot be understood by material senses. It can only be understood by spiritual senses, which is saturated with love, which has become purified, cleansed by hearing topics related to Krishna. This is how they become purified. So when a little faith is awakened, someone may say, I don't fully understand. But even though I don't fully understand, there must be something, because I'm certainly not experiencing ecstasy in my life. I've certainly experienced enough pleasure, so-called ecstasy, which was followed by suffering. I got the experience of the other type of suffering. I've experienced that in this world. I know what it's like. And that's why when I hear about Vaishnava's suffering, I can't understand it. And I think that it could be mundane, because I think suffering is just this type of suffering. But there must be something to the suffering which Chaitanya Mahaprabhu experiences, to the suffering that Srimati Radharani experiences, to the suffering that Gopakumar was experiencing everywhere he was visiting. When he went to Vaikuntha, when he went to Dwarka, he was also suffering, even though he was in the place of the highest plane of ecstasy for those who are of that mentality. Why was he suffering? He was suffering because he was feeling separation from his Lord. He understood. He had a taste. He had a little glimpse. He had a little realization from the chanting of his mantra. He was even experiencing, by chanting his mantra, that sometimes he experienced that Gopal would come up to him and embrace him, hug him and hold him in embrace. And not only that, but he'd give him a little kiss on the cheek. And he'd say, and not only that, but which is actually described in Brihad Bhagavatamrita, that Gopal was so ecstatic to see Gopakumara once again in the spiritual world that he lost consciousness in ecstatic bliss. Krishna himself experiences this ecstasy out of separation from his devotees. So, if one does not understand in the beginning but continues to hear again and again the wonderful effects of Lord Chaitanya's pastimes, will bring love for Krishna. Gradually, one will come to understand the loving affairs between Krishna and the gopis and other associates of Vrindavan. Everyone is advised to continue to hear over and over and over again in order to greatly benefit. That's it. I was going to also read about the other reasons behind Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's parents, but I mostly stuck with the theme of he came to experience what he couldn't experience as Krishna. Why? What is it? I see it. I see it. He sees what Radharani is experiencing it. I see it, but I can't taste it. I'm God. I should know everything. God is all-knowing. He's all-pervasive. He should understand it. But I can't know that. So how can he know it? The only way he sees it, but the only way he can know it is by coming in the mood, tasting that mood. What is it that Radharani sees in me? What is that sweetness that she sees? I want to know what she sees about me. I want to experience what she experiences about me. So, after manifesting his pastimes as Lord Krishna 5,000 years ago, after some time he began to think, it's been a long time since I've come to this world. I should come again. But this time I will come and I'll teach. Before, Krishna said, if you want to have love of God, if you want to become delivered from all sinful reactions, just abandon all varieties of religion and surrender unto me. So he set a condition, but Prabhupada explained, but when he came as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu took away that condition. He didn't even say surrender. He said, just take. Just take. That's all. Just take this holy name. Chant this holy name with a little faith. That's all I ask, just a little faith. Chant it once. If you liked it once, chant it again. If you like one round, chant 2. If you like 2, then chant 4. If you like chanting 16, then chant more. Chant and try to understand what is the actual goal. By hearing about these topics again and again, one will be able to understand. Even at the beginning, he cannot, because there's a little faith. That's all Prabhupada says in the beginning of Bhagavad Gita. He says, if one can understand that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, if he can at least theoretically accept that Krishna is God, then he can understand Bhagavad Gita. Theoretically accept. So this is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's purpose for his descent, to experience these 3 internal ecstasies and to disseminate love of Godhead by tasting it himself and by giving others the opportunity to come in contact with Krishna, who personally manifested himself, Chaitodapana Majana Bhava Mahadavargi Nivarpanam, who manifested himself within the holy name of the Lord. And to answer the call of Advaita Acharya, who made some pretty strong prayers and requests for the Lord to please come and descend and to help these fallen people, these fallen forgetful souls who are very much in need of your mercy. These are reasons why Lord Chaitanya appeared, and we chose to speak about them today. We thought them to be relevant to his divine appearance day. I'm sorry I spoke a little bit longer than I was supposed to, but thank you very much for your time and attention. Hare Krishna, all glories to Srila Prabhupada.